Hi, cousins. I'm Shemaya. It's like papaya, except it's not. And this is Plot Twist Please, a podcast where I use pop culture to help make our brains a little cozier. Yeah. Today we're talking about the phrase, be confident. Halt. Before you subscribe, you should know that the thoughts I present here are based on an anti-oppressive ethic. But my conclusions concerning these topics are always fluctuating, since they should, people change over time. So your brains can too. Now, let's get into it. Self-confidence. I found that most people fall on either side of the self-confidence spectrum. When you realize that I'm a theater kid who has spent ample time around other theater kids in my life, that statement makes a whole lot of sense. But I plan today, right now, to speak to a particular flavor of self-confidence. Black woman self-confidence. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because as of late, I've watched the images in my head of successful Black women in loving, healthy partnerships slowly disintegrate, and I was left to question why that is. That and because this platform centers, anti-oppressive wellness, but I digress. It's interesting to me that people tend to believe Black women to be strong and confident all the time when we are so fragile. That's why Black girl magic is a thing. It's a defense against the plights that we deal with on a daily basis as Black women. Knowing this, when I hear about Black powerful women who are crushing it in their careers, changing their industries, but suffering in their romantic relationships, it concerns me. Trigger warning, but domestic violence. If you need a moment to fast forward, mute, grab a snack, or whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, do that. Now, let's talk about the most extreme version of this phenomenon in media, domestic violence. Now, ever heard of The Color Purple? Just a random production? Yeah, me too. I was originally going to talk about Keke Palmer and the alleged domestic abuse that she'd suffered at the hands of her partner. Allegedly, I have to say that legally. But I really didn't want to put any victims on the spot here, and I wanted to just let her do what she needs to do, let people heal. Not that she's going to see this, but, that's something that I hold firm on. So we're just not going to address that today. But I want to be very clear about something. In this space here, there's no victim blaming allowed. Men abuse women on their own volition, and no kind of behavior warrants, deserves, or is the direct cause of one's abuse. Also, men are victims of domestic abuse as well. Just wanted to point that out. That being said, something I think that's made clear throughout the movie, book, musical, and movie musical, I think I got them all, is how oppressive systems impact self-esteem. Those on the margins, fat people, dark-skinned people, neurodivergent people, tend to need to circumvent so much in order to view themselves as valuable. It makes sense, right? If no one said, hey, you're great, you're not going to think you're great. And it doesn't help that there's a particular kind of person that abusers seek out, at risk of making a person who's extremely flawed seem like a monster hiding in the back of your closet. At the very least, they are attracted to those kinds of people. An excerpt from the National Domestic Abuse Hotline reads, "Domestic violence stems from a desire to gain and maintain power and control over an intimate partner. Abusive people believe they have the right to control and restrict their partners' lives. This is often because they believe their own feelings and their own needs should take precedence in the relationship, and I'm paraphrasing here, or because they enjoy exerting that power that abuse gives them. Tactics of abuse in any form, quoting again, are aimed at dismantling equality in the relationship in order to make their partners feel less valuable and undeserving of respect." By the way, the number for the domestic abuse hotline is 800-799-7233. There are lots of different ways in which someone can end up in a toxic dynamic like this, but low self-esteem seems to be, common denominator, seems to be the bullseye. Now, let's talk about me. I never used to feel like I was equipped for romantic relationships, and I think a lot of that has to do with growing up both a Black woman and someone who is neurodivergent. As a Black girl who went to predominantly white schools, I'm gonna be honest, okay? No one asked me out. Nobody. I'm telling you, not a single soul throughout my entire educational experience from preschool to college. Zero, zip at all. Yet, anytime I would lament to a friend about the plights of singleness, they'd be like, I'm sure someone likes you. I'm sure guys want to ask you out. And I'd be like, Bethany, that's real funny, because if they did, they showed up and tell me. So, imagine you see every single one of your friends get into relationships at some point in their life. Friends who are stereotypically attractive, and then other friends who are not. Wouldn't that do something to you? Not saying that anyone who's attractive deserves partnership. That's a whole nother thing that I want to talk about on this channel. But if you were to say, oh, people only get into relationships who are stereotypically attractive, that doesn't really check out. And I think I really did take this to heart over the years. And I think many Black women do. Black girls growing into Black women do. Not to mention lots of Afrocentric hairstyles that I thought were cute. Like, I thought it was fly. I wore them to school and felt like an alien from another planet. Different, yeah, but romantic partner, no. No, they liked the long, thick, cascading, wavy hair. They didn't get the box braids and the afros. Now, yes, it would have been harder if I were fat, dark-skinned, or I didn't have these Disney eyes, as I like to call them, but it still hurt. I still felt undesirable, and there was no actual proof of the alternative. And you know how important evidence is to me if you've been subscribed for a while. I'm an evidence girl. I like my stats, I like my data, I like my charts. Now let's hop on over to the autistic side of things. A lot of autistic children tend to experience a kind of discomfort from their peers, and so many either have few long-term relationships or cease to form them altogether. Both platonically and romantically, we tend to struggle. It's a struggle bus. We bound the struggle bus. Beep, beep. So for me, I started to believe that fundamentally that I was not built for romantic connection. Had I felt a romantic connection before? Yes, absolutely. I had crushes on people, but I was always like, oh, not so fast, little missy. That's not for you. You can't have the cupcake. You can look at the cupcake, you can smell the cupcake, but you cannot have it. In fact, you aren't allowed to have any cupcakes at all for your whole life, because cupcakes are only for people who aren't bad or weird. More or less, that's what I tell myself. So anytime I liked a guy, I just kind of shut that possibility out of my brain after a while. And when you don't think you're worthy of a romantic relationship, you will accept anyone who comes along to give you a morsel of the real thing. Not only might you think it's the best you can get, but you also might not even know whether you're being treated with respect. Like, you might not know if how you're being treated is normal, especially if you, like a lot of autistic adults, find yourself in isolation, where you have nobody close to you who can see the signs of someone trying to control you or the patterns of manipulation. It is very easy, unfortunately, to get stuck. If you're in any marginalized group where there's a history of being treated like you are not important, you are susceptible to this kind of harm. If it's not an abusive situation, we can potentially find ourselves in relationships that are extremely toxic and tend to only serve the other person. I was in a situation, okay, here's just a little bit of tea, just some soft tea light. At one point in my life, not a relationship, I want to be clear about that, but I was in a situation where I was pining after someone who knowingly, I've concluded today, had strung me along for years. I know, tale as old as time, we're embarrassed, Harriet did not free us for this, yada, yada, yada. But in hindsight, for me, it was rather convenient. Frankly, for both of us, it gave us what we wanted. Though I can't know his motivations, I truly think I liked feeling insignificant and small because it meant that no one would have to actually see me. It was a safe place to hide in someone's afterthoughts, and I was comfortable there. I was used to the distance anyway, so used to the ambiguity of human connection. And when I didn't think I would ever get that cupcake I was talking about, I settled for crumbs. The only reason why I'm talking about this now is because A, I know someone out there needs to hear this. Autistic people, particularly, are more susceptible to abuse than non-autistic people. And B, I doubt this person will ever hear this or frankly care. That notion doesn't really upset me, even though it used to. That someone could hurt me and not care. But a long time ago, I released that. Here's why. I started asking myself why I needed him to care. And the answer I came up with was I needed a sign that my pain, however small, made a ripple in the world. That someone would see it and go, you didn't deserve that. But you know that? You actually aren't an unlovable alien amoeba. I think that's why people seek apologies. No, also, I really do reject the notion that claiming that someone's mistreatment didn't affect you or puffing out your chest in that vein is helpful. Maybe it saves you some pride, but what good is that? Can you exchange pride for dollars? Can it pay rent? Can you put it in an oven and meal prep with it? Can you spread paint all over it and hang it on a wall? What value does it really have? Frankly, a lot of autistic people don't have a lot of pride, so in that vein, I do wonder why I should care whether or not the people who harm me, quote, see me sweat. What good is sparing my pride if I'm in turmoil? Why am I centering someone else's perception of me while I suffer? With risk of sounding like a wannabe slam poet, I have to admit, I am someone who has an intimate relationship with suffering. And suffering in isolation is not the fix we tend to think it is, and not communicating our pain is not the flex we want it to be. The fact is, at one point, I allowed myself to be put in a position where someone could dip into my life and then disappear, and then dip into my life and then disappear again, and then every now and then, belittle me or try to gain control again. We all go through something like that before we develop self-esteem, right? But, and no, I will not be revealing names, but I did learn a few things from that. As much compassion as I have for that person, someone who is attracted to you at your worst will bring the worst out of you. The second thing I learned was that insecure men can be really dangerous to ambitious women, or women with low self-esteem who are also ambitious. I really meant to connect those together. Another disclaimer for the homies in the wings: anyone in survival mode can be dangerous to someone else, especially if they're in fight mode, So this isn't me saying all men are violent, even though I do think that all men are socialized to be violent. But that's another story, yada, 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 dippity bop doo. What I really do think is that these conclusions are supported by how the husbands of career-driven, highly decorated Black women in the public eye act. Now, am I claiming that all of these women have low self-esteem? No, I don't know these women. But I am claiming that these women have a deep desire for romantic partnership. A desire that seemed, in some cases, to supersede how they want to be treated, or how they are comfortable with being perceived in relation to their partner by other people. You know the whole thing with Simone Biles' husband, Okay, so if you don't know, Simone Biles' husband went on a podcast recently seemingly gawking about how he, quote, didn't know who Simone was before, after they swiped on each other. They're swiping on a dating app, an app that I am on, by the way. Anyway, saying that that he said in the interview that he was the prize in the relationship, and alluded in what many would interpret as a disrespectful and misogynistic way that she was of lesser value. So when I look at these examples, I am reminded how deeply Black women crave intimate romantic love. Extremely ambitious Black women, for that matter. A lot of people online were saying, girl, what's wrong with you? Do you hear this man? Do you hear how he's talking about you? But what I think people keep missing is the fact that Black women are always accepting the scraps because we've always had to. Or at the very least, we felt we had to. Ooh, this hair. Ooh, I am trying. I tried to do something different with my hair, y'all. Anyway, the dating market, at least what the data says that's been swarming around, doesn't tend to favor Black women statistically, and a lot of us take that data, the data that personally I think might be biased and may need an update. That's neither here nor there, but we take that and we run with it. We think, oh no, pickings are slim. Gotta find a man quick. And I personally am grateful for the aunties, the mamas, the adult Black women in my life growing up who had the eye of the tiger, who told me to focus on my grades instead of boys. And I now know why. I know why, because, hair's getting worse. Okay. Anyway, I now know that without a partner, I am still me. I'm still complete. I've already talked down here about how I don't center romantic relationships in my life as an adult. And even though I think many people, especially women, do, frankly, I'm just not wired that way. I've always been incredibly ambitious, and your girl has always wanted to make stuff. I was always making stuff. What can I say? And that has always been something I've been passionate about since I was little. As soon as I could write, I wrote a series of comic books. I wrote a comic book series. It's like Drew wrote. But that series is now locked away in my childhood home, and every once in a while I take a peek. I hosted a talk show on a cable channel when I was a preteen. I sold sandwiches out of my parents' trunk because I wanted enough money to buy my own Whopper without asking them for money. And I haven't changed. I don't ask my dad for money. Entrepreneurship, building things from the ground up is what I love to do. It makes my head tingle. A romantic relationship was never going to be enough for me. It was never going to fill that slot. Now, I do think we need to stop shaming Black women for wanting to be held, pampered, and doted on, because, we deserve it. We deserve to be treated delicately if we want to. And, we deserve loving partnerships, and there's nothing wrong with desiring them. Let Black women desire things. Let us want things that make us feel good. I don't think a lot of people are comfortable with Black women being romantically desired either. Sexually desired? Yes. But we want to be romantically desired too. We are lover girls too. There's so much power in allowing ourselves to dream, especially in a time where the love we're seeking feels so out of reach. I got into a conversation with a friend of mine who I was talking to about the struggles of being single and of being a control freak, which I am, and wanting to date. And I came to the conclusion, I told him about this conclusion. I was telling him, I feel like capitalism wants us to go, go, go all the time. Capitalism is so urgent. And because we are used to going after things that we want that also feel urgent, we think that urgency has to trickle into our personal relationships. We think that if we want a partner, we have to have a partner now so that we can meet that goal of having a partner and look like the other people who have partners, so that our lives can look like something in particular, just like capitalism makes us feel like we have to, But I told him, what if romantic pursuit, the pursuit of something that just makes you feel good, is the antithesis of everything that we are used to, is the antithesis of what capitalism tries to condition us for. Maybe it's not about the production. Maybe it's not about, okay, I have this thing now that I can monetize. I have this thing now that has to work for me now, that is going to be put to work. You know what I mean? Not saying that dating, relationships, marriage, not saying all that isn't work. But we attach this urgency to it that I don't think was ever intended to be attached. I think capitalism makes us feel like if we don't have something, we're inadequate. Or makes us feel like if we're not like everybody else, we're inadequate. But what if we view romantic or relationships in general as the only thing that doesn't rely on that? The only thing that can just be organic, that you can't force, that you can't strategize for. It just is. Personally, I don't want any preconceived ideas to cloud my love story. I think lots of people get preoccupied by certain things when it comes to what they're looking for in a partner, but I don't know. I don't want to try and imagine what he looks like, or, if he has a six-pack, or what he does for a living, or what his voice sounds like. But I do want to know one thing as concretely as possible. I want to know how I feel in my body when I'm around him. Here's what I learned from The Body Keeps the Score. Your body remembers your trauma. Your body remembers the things that make you feel good. Your nervous system, that is, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn responses. Your body tries to use these things to protect you, but sometimes it's not helpful. Sometimes it's just like sabotage. Sometimes it's just like throwing a wrench at it. That's as helpful as it is, just throwing a wrench at something. And I think a lot of people struggle with knowing what their bodies are trying to tell them in romantic situations where they're being taken advantage of. That may be, for neurodivergent folks, that may particularly be due to the fact that we are so used to being uncomfortable. Due to this discrepancy, someone telling us to stand up for ourselves or be confident doesn't mean much. Confidence is not a switch you can flip on and off. And also, what if you don't even know if someone's making fun of you because you can't read social cues? And if you do recognize that you're being mistreated, for some people, being confident is synonymous with reshaping your entire worldview. Tearing something up into the tiniest pieces and trying to reconfigure it with chewed up gum. It's restarting from the ground up. I feel like there's always a shaming aspect too when someone tells you to be confident. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just my exasperation of people having told me to just be confident when I was like, it's not just a switch. I can't just do it. It's not something I can just say, voila. But when people would say things like that to me, I would feel like I was letting them down, and then my confidence would decrease even more. Giving yeah, spin my head around, like that. Something that has been helpful for me to slowly build my confidence is focus on what I know is true. Those platitudes never quite scratched my itch. The overpositivity never quite did it for me, but something that I did find comfort in is the notion that I wasn't alone. I feel like if we remember that it's not just us out here as, the othered, as the minorities, then we just might have a shot. That is all I have for you today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave a review. I really like hearing what you have to say. Tell me what you liked about this episode or the podcast in general. Let me know any suggestions you have in the comments about topics you want me to cover in the pop culture mental health space. Stay tuned for bi-weekly episodes. Be blessed and stay weird. Bye.